Hi everybody, it's Joe Cioffi here on this Friday night, April 27th, 2018, and 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time as we head into a weekend. Hope everybody had a great day. We had a very dreary day here in my neck of the woods with some downpours, and now some dense fog is rolling in from the east over coastal areas and probably will make its way back westward to some degree during the overnight period. We'll have to deal with that. We've got a lot of unusual things going on over the weekend and into next week. We're still seeing this volatility in the overall weather pattern going forward, and we are going to see some big swings here, especially because tomorrow will probably be up around or into the low 70s in inland areas where I am, only to be followed by some very, very cold air, especially aloft. Not so much at the surface. It'll be cold enough at the surface, and certainly I would say it would be chilly by standards of this time of year for Sunday. But the upper air storm that's driving all this is going to create a very unstable atmosphere. And I'm thinking, and actually the Storm Prediction Center did write this in their discussion, I'm thinking that we might see some low-top thunderstorms scattered around at some point on Sunday, and this might maybe even trigger off some small hail, and there'll probably be some snow showers in parts of upstate New York underneath that upper low, and maybe even some of those will develop into some low-top thunderstorms. So we've got that. Then we're going to transition over to some very warm air as we move into the middle part of next week. That still seems to be on course. And there will also be a severe weather outbreak, which the Storm Prediction Center is actually indicating in its day 4 through 8 forecast, which you don't really see that often, but it is carrying a risk of severe weather in its long range beginning on Monday in the western plains and then very slowly progressing eastward. Just want to correct something yesterday, at least from the standpoint of the activity. We were talking about severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center didn't exactly update their numbers, so they showed a total tornado activity at 18 for the month of March, but that was not a final figure. They still, I guess, have to go through everything and make sure they're not double counting, but we did happen to find, if I can just find it again, I did happen to pull up the stats, and while the 3-year average for tornadoes in the month of March is at 96, the actual observed is sitting at, I think it was 64. So it's still significantly below, and we are, well below the 3-year average for severe weather this year. I wish I could. Let me see if I could find this. Let's see. And naturally, it's not going to get it to me. I have to pull it up from the other site. But just trust me on this, folks. So we just had to correct those numbers. Sometimes the Weather Service doesn't always update things as quickly as you might like them to. So we'll give that another look, as we said, over the next few days. We'll start updating these numbers as we look at the month of April. But there is going to be a pickup in severe weather next week. That's for sure. So let's go to show you what's going on here at the moment. And I'm going to start with the current radar. There's a bit of weather going on off the Florida coast, by the way, and there the Storm Prediction Center is showing a marginal risk of severe weather, but that really is the only place where it's showing much of anything. But you'll notice that there's 3 bands of showers here representing 3 short waves, one in eastern New England, the second one now moving into eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania. That's the weakest of the bunch and is going to fall apart during the overnight as it moves northeastward. It's the third one behind it that's in southern Wisconsin and over near Chicago. That is going to be the one that eventually develops into a very strong upper air storm. And that will be the driving force for the weather this weekend. We also have some activity coming into the Pacific Northwest, with a general area of thunderstorms being indicated for the Northwest. But other than that, we're pretty quiet around the country. Take a look at the watches and warnings here. I mean, really very little. A couple of red flag warnings here and there. Still have flood watches up for northern Maine, and a few dense fog advisories and some patchy areas with wind advisories, etc. But that's it. I mean, it's really quiet. And if you look off the Florida coast, looks like it's probably somewhere northeast of Palm Beach, a little yellow, a little brownish yellow there, indicating a special marine warning. So that's really the extent of all of this as far as the activity goes. Here is the Storm Prediction Center's severe weather outlook with the radar behind it. You've got the marginal risk of severe weather in southeastern Florida, a general area of thunderstorms, Ohio into western PA from that second short wave, another small area that was indicated in parts of Wisconsin. And then you have some potential for some thunderstorms out in the west, up from western New Mexico through much of Arizona, then kind of snakes its way northwestward up into Oregon, Northern California, and southern Washington. So you notice again, that's really it. The activity is very, very small. And here's that day 4 to day 8 outlook that I was telling you about. And you know, starting with the day 4 right here, this is unusual. Day 5 and day 6. Showing 4, 5, 6. That's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. So especially looking at Wednesday, that looks like a pretty sizable area there of severe weather that that's being indicated for parts of for a good chunk of Kansas and Oklahoma and back into North Texas. Okay, so where are we going with all this as far as the weekend is concerned and into next week? Well, first off, let's bring up the upper air so we can get a good sense of what's happening in the highest levels of the atmosphere. And, you know, whenever you have a strong upper low at this time of year, you're also dealing with a very strong April sun that is attempting to go to work on that cold, unstable air. So that's going to create, you know, a fairly unstable atmosphere. And the fact is, it is a very, very cold pool of air. So you could wind up with what I've described as these low cloud top thunderstorms that you often get. They only go up to maybe 20, 25,000 feet, but they wind up producing hail, and sometimes you can get even graupel out of it. And in upstate New York, they might wind up seeing snow showers out of it. This would be mostly for Sunday, later Sunday into the overnight Sunday night into Monday morning. Now here's our current, the map that the GFS has for this evening. And as we move into tomorrow, we're going to have a cold front approaching, and the blue lines, those thickness lines, measuring the cold, the relative cold versus the warmth. The cold air that is coming down from east central Canada down across the Great Lakes and into the Ohio Valley. This is a fairly strong shot of cold air, and on Sunday that front is through, and you can see that the model does try to generate some precip there, and even in some shades of blue you're talking about snow. Now it's not going to get it exactly right, and I think the NAM might have a better view of this, but when we look at the 850 millibar, roughly at about 4,500 feet, this is cold air for this time of year. Temperatures below freezing in that dark blue area. I'll get a little closer. I'll get the tighter view. And you can see this is all, you know, certainly at that level of the atmosphere would be cold enough for snow. And this is cold air. This is going into Sunday night, into Monday. I mean, gradually that air modifies as the upper low finally pulls away to the east, and then we start to get into the warmer air aloft that starts to push into the area beginning on Tuesday, into the northeast beginning on Tuesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday. Again, this is up at about 4,500 feet or so. But when you ever have a cold pool like that, it is this time of year, it is troublesome in terms of getting some scattered showers, and again, possibly even some unusual, what we've called low-top thunderstorms. But here's the deep trough that's on the upper air on Saturday, and you can see that it drops this cutoff low. There's an upper air low sitting in north central New York State. This is Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, Monday morning, 8 a.m., and it's still sitting in New England Monday afternoon. It takes an awful long time for this thing to get out of the way. So the longer it takes to get out of the way, the longer it's going to take for the warm air of the west to come in. Now, eventually, as we get into Tuesday, that upper low gets kicked out to the east, and finally, you get this ridge of high pressure that aloft that builds into the eastern states, and this really gets the warm-up going. By the time we get to Wednesday, I think Wednesday will be the first day where we should see a fair number of cities that are going to be coming in with temperatures in the 80s for highs. And here's the 2 p.m. temperature map. And the darker reds would be indicative of 80s, possibly into southern New England, as far north as southern New England. And you can also see how far north the 70s get. And as we go into Thursday, there it is again. Although the model is a little bit being a little less aggressive with this as far as bringing up warm air is concerned. There is another front that's coming down from the north that'll probably get in here along about Friday. Still some residual warm air around on Friday, but starts to cool off a bit in New England and through upstate New York. And then as we move into Saturday, still some residual mild air left around, depending on how the next front behaves. And then after that, temperatures get back down to something resembling a bit more seasonal for this time of year. Now, with respect to the actual weather that we think is going to happen, we'll take a look at the east. And again, we'll work through whatever we work through. On Saturday, we get a front that comes through with a few showers. And then later in the day, Sunday into Sunday night, Monday morning, as that upper air storm rotates and you get these spokes that come around it, producing some scattered showers or the odd small thunderstorm. And then there's your high, your surface high on Tuesday afternoon off the South Carolina coast. You've got a nice west wind. That should start to take the temperatures back up at least through the 60s and maybe even into some 70s. Now here's the issue as we go into Thursday. There is a front back here that is running from just south of Detroit to Chicago, low pressure back in Colorado. Well, the model seems to want to sag this a little bit further to the south, and kind of, I don't know if I buy the showers, but it might mean for some clouds. We'll be on the warm side of that front for sure, but it might mean for some clouds. You'll notice the showers do dissipate, and then the front just kind of gets hung up there for a little bit before attempting to make a push through here along about later on Friday. But it's not a strong front. The air behind it is not all that cool, only enough to bring it back to seasonal. Now, with respect to the severe weather threat that's being indicated by the Storm Prediction Center, we can go back to Monday, and I'll go on the wider view. The Storm Prediction Center does have, I guess for Monday night into Tuesday morning, starts to develop what could be some showers and thunderstorms scattered from North Texas on up into parts of southern Nebraska. And then as we move into Tuesday night, you start to see an area that forms up through Kansas and on up through Iowa. This could be a slight disagreement in terms of what the model is showing with respect to what the forecasters are showing. Low pressure in Colorado here back in the middle of next week with some rain and snow in the mountains in the central Rockies. That could be the trigger for what they have is that big area of 30% risk of severe weather here. And the GFS does spray out some showers and some heavier rains here for Wednesday night into Thursday. And then again, doesn't go out far enough, but more on Thursday night into Friday in the middle Mississippi Valley back into northeastern Texas. So it does look like a fairly active period going forward with severe weather, although I don't know how widespread it's going to be. Meanwhile, I just want to give you a view of the west as we take this along. And we do have a system coming in on Sunday into the northwest with some rain and snow. You know, this is the system that eventually gets into the Rockies and Plains and causes whatever thunderstorm activity that winds up possibly being strong or scattered severe. We'll see how it plays out. One of the things I do want to show you with respect to the long range, and we'll bring up the upper air again and go to a wider view. I think we're going to go into a pattern now that is going to at least argue for argue for the idea. It's been a long week. Argue for the idea that weather systems will be moving along on a fairly regular basis. So we'll have some nice days and we'll have the occasional not so nice day. But here's that ridge in the east. There's no blocking at all to speak of. It just there's none. The NAO, North Atlantic Oscillation, actually for this time of year goes off the wall positive. And you can see if you look up where the darker blues are, this is cold air, lower pressures in the upper atmosphere across much of northeastern Canada and Greenland, as opposed to when we had the higher pressures being shown there from a few days ago up until this weekend. That's all breaking down, and as long as this is the case, you're going to have shortwave troughs that are going to try to move through from time to time, but everything is going to want to keep on moving. As we get into mid-month, it does pop up a strong ridge off the southeast coast of the United States. Some of the longer long-range models are showing this to hang around for the second half of the month, that temperatures could go actually above average for the second half of the month of May in a more sustained way, rather than what we see starting this coming week, where it's a bit more transitory, 2 or 3 days, then you get a front to go through, temperatures closer to seasonal or maybe a little bit above, but I don't see any kind of big cold, as long as you're going to have a lack of higher pressures up in Canada kind of forcing that cold air down and displacing the jet stream further south. I'm really thinking that May is going to be a bit different than what the month of April was, and I think the winter weather haters are going to be very happy about this. In Europe, we'll take a look at what's happening across the pond. We were talking yesterday about the fact that over Europe and in Britain that we would see a bit more activity going on, and we do have a storm here that is moving up through France and headed to the English Channel as we move into early next week, with some rain and wind into England, and then that moves northeastward. We get another wave coming in from the Atlantic with more rain the middle of next week. Low pressure in the Mediterranean here spinning around, and that was indicated yesterday, fairly deep low. It looks like it's a little less deep this time around, but it eventually just kind of makes its way northward. So we're getting some rains across parts of Italy and over into Austria, Hungary, over to Greece, back over into Switzerland. No cold air around, by the way. You notice it's really warmed up quite nicely across the Atlantic on the other side. And one other thing before we come back in the land of pure speculation, because in 18 days the Pacific hurricane season gets underway, and we're going to start seeing things on models that are they're going to start popping up tropical systems in the long range. And I may not have the map far enough out. In fact, I don't. I got to get a different geography here. Maybe this one will work better. I think this one does. So for whatever reason, today's model run actually, starting from day 9, develops a low out in the tropical Pacific and wraps it up into a fairly formidable hurricane there at one point. It's got a 952 pressure before it turns it northeastward and carries it off inland over the Pacific coast of Mexico. Now, I'm showing you this if only because of the fact that we're going to, just like in the winter time, when we see models producing snowstorm after snowstorm in the long range, we're going to start seeing it do the same thing with the tropical systems. And I don't want everybody to get worked up over stuff in the long range. That's why I figured let me show it to you now so that we can kind of get it out of our system in a sense, and not start getting all wrapped up about model runs showing one thing or another. So Patricia Owens is praying for no more Sandys. Well, yeah, of course we don't want that to repeat, and as far as the Atlantic is concerned, we are way too early for anything at this point. So but again, getting closer. Pretty soon we'll be sitting at the end of May and we'll start knocking on the door on the Atlantic hurricane season, which starts on June 1st. Do I believe, Timothy Veltman, that the law of averages will dramatically increase to average the season out? Well, you could use that in a number of ways. I happen to notice that the severe weather activity last year was, especially in the month of January, there was a large number of tornadoes that were produced in the month of January. So, if you want to take it over the 3-year average rather than the month to month, I would tend to think that the activity has been subpar for March, and I believe the numbers of April so far are a bit on the subpar side. So I'm a firm believer in that until a pattern breaks down, you kind of go with the flow. The trend is your friend. So maybe it'll rev up a bit down the road, but right now I'm not seeing any real signs of that. Frost Sunday morning, Monday, Tuesday morning. William Huber, I'm going to say not for Monday morning because there might be enough of a wind, and I'm going to say no for Monday morning. Well, inland, temperatures getting down into the low 30s, possibly, but there may still be a bit of a wind issue that might keep a frost from developing. Tuesday morning, I'm going to say maybe not because we'll have the wind from the south, the west-southwest, starting to bring in that warmer air. But I think maybe the best approach to that is evaluate what kind of conditions we have when we get to Sunday, to look ahead into Monday night into Tuesday morning. Maybe some cold spots might get down to 32, but I would kind of argue against it. On the other hand, I will say this: if you are, thinking about doing, getting your plants in and your vegetables, I would wait past this weekend and just wait for the first full weekend in May. You can plant your flowers and veggies then, I'm sorry, I'm losing track here. Plant your vegetables and your flowers then, and also watch the Kentucky Derby at the same time. Rubber bands do snap eventually, Jason Schaefer. We just don't know, exactly when that is. So I'm thinking that we're going to just probably see what we have just continue for a while longer. Low tops thunderstorms. If it has hail, then it doesn't have to go up to 40,000 feet. I've seen low top thunderstorms develop with tops in the 20 to 25,000 foot range. That has happened. It happens sometimes in the fall. I'm trying to remember if it happened this past October. I think it did for some places at one point, and the October before that also. I think we saw some around, if my memory serves me correctly, which lately it hasn't been, but I've seen low top thunderstorms, with 25,000 foot tops that are producing lightning. I mean, obviously they're not the most vicious thunderstorms in the world. They can put on a bit of a show, but oftentimes out of that you do get small pea-sized hail that falls. Wouldn't surprise me if we see reports of that over the weekend. the bugs are now out for 3 days, so that's good to see. Yeah, Patricia, when I was up in Connecticut earlier this week fishing, a lot of the flies were out. The trout didn't seem to be very interested in that, by the way, but at least the flies were out there. So in theory, the trout should have been out, but they were not. Okay, folks, I'm going to call it a night as we head into the weekend. I hope everybody has a good weekend planned. I'm going to go see my daughter, who's about to have a baby in 3 weeks, and spend some time with her on Saturday. So I may not be live streaming tomorrow, but if not, I will be back on Sunday. So I hope everybody has some great plans for the weekend. Take advantage of your Saturday. If you're in the Northeast, that will be at least my neck of the woods, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. That will be the better of the 2 weekend days. And then Sunday will be very much on the blustery, chilly side. And that's right, William Uber. Grandpa, that's what I'm going to be. 3 weeks from Sunday is the due date. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, and neither do they. We're all going to be surprised when the baby arrives. So we'll leave it at that. The Joe Rayo Joe Cioffi Show, or the Joe Cioffi Joe Rayo Show. Since we call it the Joe and Joe Show, we both get top billing. That'll be coming up at 9:15 on Facebook, and I have also, if you go to the video library on my YouTube channel, I have been uploading those shows after they're done, so if you can't get them on Facebook, you certainly can get them here on YouTube. I've been having much success getting them up onto YouTube before 10 o'clock Eastern Time in the evening. So you'll get a chance to watch us. Yesterday's show is up there, and so is Wednesdays if you want to go back and take a look at it. And we have Joe and I have a lot of fun. Just real quick, I mean, he and I have known each other for over 40 years, and we really enjoy doing the Joe and Joe Show. Nick Cortese, beautiful landscaping work that you did with the pictures that you sent me. Thank you for banging Super Chat tonight for a bit of a cup of coffee for me. I really appreciate it, and your warm weather and your warm temperatures for us will be coming on Wednesday and for Thursday and probably into Friday. And it's okay. I know you're late. You'll bang it. You'll hit me with messages like you usually do. Anyway, Facebook 9:15 Eastern Time for the Joe and Joe Show. Have a great weekend. We will see you on not tomorrow, but likely on Sunday.